What the court said today is that because the original decision by the National Energy Board was overturned, that we should revisit the conditions that were placed on the British Columbia Environmental Assessment Certificate. And we're still studying the decision, but our intention is to take the appropriate amount of time to review the conditions that were placed on our certificate, as well as to do appropriate consultation with Indigenous nations.
I'm just going to ask that folks put up their hand and speak into the mic so we can record your questions. So if you have questions, let us know. Okay.
Frank Chi with Omni News. So how the provincial government is going to proceed from now on?
We are still studying the decision to decide the appropriate way to review the conditions on our environmental assessment certificate, but we've been clear from day one that of being in office as the government of BC that we intend to do everything we can within our jurisdiction, within the law, to defend British Columbians' interests, to defend our environment, to defend our coast, to defend the tens of thousands of jobs that could be an impact from an oil spill. So we will look at the conditions in the light of what the federal court said about the original NEB decision. We'll consult with Indigenous nations, and we will take every measure available to us to protect BC's interests. That's exactly why we introduced a reference case to assert BC's rights to regulate, to protect our environment and economy, and that's why we're taking that case to the Supreme Court of Canada.
CBC, go ahead.
Mr. Heyman, I'm Chantal from CBC here. I'm wondering if there are any identified conditions in addition to the 37 that have already been identified by this provincial government as things that they wanted to expand upon or amend, and if there are other conditions that haven't been able to be put on the table that the previous Liberal government did not.
We've continually identified for the federal government and the National Energy Board weaknesses that we found in the measures identified by Trans Mountain, identified by the National Energy Board to protect against an oil spill. But some of this is outside of BC's jurisdiction and squarely in Canada's. We'll continue to advocate strongly for changes and for the greatest possible protections in the event this project goes forward. We just received the court decision today. We have to decide a way forward to review the conditions that apply to matters that are within British Columbia's jurisdiction. We'll take the time to do that right, and we'll take the time to consult with Indigenous nations as we do that.
Okay, Jeremy Hainsworth, Glacier Media.
Jeremy Hainsworth from Glacier Media. I don't know how much I have to read to you from the election platform promise, but it does say we will use every tool in our toolbox to stop the project from going ahead. What tool is this for you guys today?
Well, we've been clear since we formed government and received advice from lawyers that we're not able to stop the project. That's in federal jurisdiction. Only the federal appeal court can stop the project. All the parties in the recent case, including the Squamish Nation, were in agreement with that fact. So we have turned our attention to doing everything we can to ensure that British Columbians' interests are protected, our environment, our coastline, tens of thousands of jobs. That is within our power. We've asserted it's within our jurisdiction. Despite challenges from Alberta and Canada, we're going to the Supreme Court of Canada to establish that, and we're going to take the time to review the conditions on matters within our jurisdiction. As the court has directed that we do, we're going to take the time to get that right. We'll continue to put forward the regulations and conditions within our jurisdiction that we can to protect British Columbians against the eventuality of the harmful impacts of diluted bitumen, particularly in case of a spill, and we'll continue to advocate with the project owner to ensure that adequate protections, robust protections are put in place to protect against catastrophic spill that would have devastating impacts for our economy, for tens of thousands of people whose jobs depend on a clean coastline.
How critical is a British Columbia certificate to the moving forward of the project?
The project does not legally require a British Columbia certificate to move forward. That is the matter of law that was explained to us when we took government, but we have put in place a certificate with conditions on matters within our jurisdiction. That's what the court has ordered us to review in the light of the original NEB certificate being overturned, and that's what we intend to do.
What does this mean for existing permits granted to the project by the province?
Permits that depend on the provincial certificate will wait, I think, until we do the review that the court has ordered. Permits that are related to the federal approval, despite the fact that that is currently being challenged in court, we'll have to see if they would be impacted by the provincial review. So it's a bit early for me to say. As I said, we're still reviewing the decision of the court, and we have to decide where there's an interplay between the federal certificate and our certificate.
CBC again?
Within the decision, Squamish Nation specifically is one of the appellants here, but when you talk about re-engaging with Indigenous groups and consulting, who can be expecting some type of communication from your office on consultation moving forward?
Well, I think any First Nation with an interest on matters that are related to the BC certificate or potential conditions that we would review or may amend or may add to would be consulted by us. That is our constitutional and legal duty, and one, of course, which we take seriously given our commitment to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We intend to take the direction of the court seriously. We intend to do our job responsibly and within the laws of Canada and British Columbia.
Any other questions?
You've spoken about federal jurisdiction, but will the province continue to rely on the National Energy Board, new names, its own assessment of the project for the province's assessment?
We will review the conditions that we put in place on our environmental assessment certificate. The court ordered us that, given that the initial National Energy Board certificate on which we relied was overturned and then reissued, we need to take that into account. It's too early for me to say exactly how we will do that going forward. As I said, we're studying the decision, we're studying our legal responsibility under that decision.
And any other questions?
Just given the status of construction on this project right now, I know this is a complex legal case to review, and there are other court cases that are yet to be resolved, including the Federal Court of Appeals case. How soon can we expect an update from the province on how you plan to proceed with this?
Well, we should let people know in as reasonable amount of time as we can manage the process that we intend to take forward to follow the instruction of the court. I can't put a time frame on that. It's not our goal to use this court decision as a tactic. We have a legal responsibility, and we also have a responsibility to British Columbians to continue to do what we've done all along, and that's to defend our collective interests, defend our environment, defend our coast, defend the jobs in the marine fishing industries, in tourism, in film from the impacts of a spill. We want to do this right, and we'll take the time to design the process that is required to do this right. We have always said that we'll take our responsibility seriously. We believe this is a wrong-headed project. We believe it's bad for British Columbia, but that decision was taken by the federal government. We're exercising every bit of jurisdiction we can to defend British Columbia's environment, our coast, our jobs, with regulations and with environmental assessment certificate conditions as appropriate.